From the garage here at Sirius XM in Los Angeles, Mr. Joe Elliott, everybody. Let's get him out here. How are you, man? You good?
Yeah, I'm grand.
So what are you doing here on the West Coast to begin with? You wrapped up in Vegas, right?
We wrapped up in Vegas on the 7th of September for the residency, and we took a 2-week break, and then we were in Vegas again this Saturday night gone for the iHeartRadio Festival, which was great because poor old Salvi had to drive 3 hours from Sheffield to London, catch a 10-hour flight into Vegas to play for 25 minutes. And then go back home. That's dedication.
Yes, that is dedication. How did, before we get to the down and outs and a bunch of things we want to talk to you about, this is the latest Vegas residency that just wrapped up. How did it all go?
It was great, wasn't it? You were there. She was at like 4 of them.
She's at every one of my broadcasts too, so
yeah.
I'm convinced she's everywhere all the time.
Yeah. She's omnipresent. Sally, the omnipresent lady. Yes. It was great fun for us because, like the previous residency that we did, or actually unlike that one where we had Dead Flat Bird doing like a ton of different songs, we had to do that because what was following was in sequence one album. Right. But what we had this time round was Dead Flat Bird didn't come. We did sell the shirts. We put a shirt up, the non-appearance, the tragic non-appearance. 2019 non-appearance.
Contractual dispute.
Yeah. So we just changed the set around every night within the confines of a Def Leppard set, if you like. So we opened with Die Hard the Hunter, which we haven't played. I was trying to work this out, so somebody can help me here. I don't know whether we ever did it with Vivian before. No. So yes, so then we haven't done Die Hard the Hunter with Viv, which means we haven't played it for at least 27, maybe 30 odd years. So we opened with that. It's a strange song to open with. But it was a great statement, and we got to do all sorts of things that we don't do on a regular basis, like slang. Billy's Got a Gun, Mirror Mirror. We did Action, Let's Go off the last album. We did a mini acoustic set where we did 2 songs we've never played live before. One of them being We Belong off the last album, where everybody sings lead vocal, and a song called Let Me Be the One off the X album, as well as bringing back Have You Ever, which we've not done in 26 years. Mm-hmm. So, for us, it was a really cool thing to be able to go on stage thinking, Christ, don't forget the words, because I'm not done for that long. So he's always edgy, and I think that's something that you might that disappears when you're on the road, because even though you're traveling from town to town, there's this kind of a psychological okayness about doing the same set night after night, because it's different people. The only people that ever complain is Dorito Boy, who reads about it but has never been to a gig. But so all the people, you go to Chicago and then you go to Detroit, there might be 12 people follow you. There's 19,000 plus that didn't. So you do the same set and it doesn't really matter. But when you're treading the same boards 12 nights, you yourself think, I've got to do something else. So it's easy to do,
Who is the ultimate arbiter of what you play? Like, in speaking to bands over the decades, especially bands like Leppard that have, you've got, 8, 9 songs that you can't not do every night, I would think.
The crown jewels, as we call them. Yeah.
And then you've got a long, deep catalog of stuff some would like to play, some would like to hear, what have you. Where does the process actually work? Because most of my experience has been that the lead singer has the ultimate veto power and gives the final blessing on what doesn't get played, because you have to sing it. But it can be I've seen bands it be contentious. I've literally watched Aerosmith do a set list before they play, and they literally all huddle up and cross this out, throw that out. How does it work with Leppard?
It's interesting. Well, I don't get to pick them. Everybody in the band will make suggestions. The one thing about the band is, and I'm not going to mention any names here, but even if we say, what about this one? Somebody might say, I fucking hate that song. But if you four want to do it, I'm fine. And that's the way it's always been. We are a brilliant cooperative. We've always been very on the same page when it comes to that kind of thing, So it was Phil's suggestion that we opened with Die Hard the Hunter. And I just looked at him like he had 3 snake heads. I'm going, what? Are you kidding me? But then the more we rehearsed it, the more I went, actually, this is genius. Yeah. So just there's no one person that is a genius in this band, but we come up with collective genius ideas. And that was one of them, I was a little concerned about it because it's got this huge 2-minute bit in the middle where there's nothing happening for the singer, and it's the first song, which is fine when it's in the middle of the set. So I get to the bit where it all breaks down and it goes instrumental. It's like, now what? So I just go around high-fiving the front row. And it worked fine, you know. Throwing shapes and like, look at my jacket, you know.
Can you give me a song that has been thrown in that discussion that you, Joe Elliott, have said, I hate that fucking song?
No. I remember, in fairness to Viv, he was really, when he first joined us, after we'd finished the Adrenalize tour, which was 240 shows, he did say something along the lines of, I never ever want to hear Tear It Down again. You know, and we've never played it since. There isn't really anything particularly that I've grown to dislike. And there was certainly no songs that if I didn't like a song so much at any stage, especially when we were recording it, I would have made my statement while we're doing the album, said this shouldn't be even on the record, so it would never become an issue in a live environment. But no, there isn't really anything that I've said, nah, I don't want to do that. There's a lot of songs we do week in, week out, year in, year out, decade in, decade out, that like they don't ever get easier to do.
Well, I was going to ask you about like Photograph or Sugar.
Photograph, especially doing them at last. Yeah. You know, and I'm 60 years old, and I wrote those melodies when I was 22. If I could go back and meet the 22-year-old me, I would punch him in the mouth. But at the same time, the 6-year-old me goes, no, I'm not giving up on this, because I'm singing them better now than I did in 1983. So it's a challenge, and while it's still doable, I'm more than happy to do those songs right at the end of the set.
People wonder where Mutt Lange is. He's running from Joe because Joe wants to punch him in the mouth for making him sing like that.
Wasn't always Mutt's fault, you know. It wasn't always Mutt's fault, but I have had that discussion with Lou Gramm and with Jonna, and we all came to the same conclusion that we should have maybe fought for our corner a little bit more occasionally. But here's the thing. There's no doubt about it. When we're all long and gone and we're dust and bones, those songs will be played, whether it be Back in Black or, you know, I Want to Know What Love Is or any of our stuff. They'll be played for forever. So I don't mind the pain that comes with them because they're worth it, you know. It's
amazing. You just mentioned Brian Johnson, who I literally just spoke to a couple days ago, is one of my favorite people. And he once told me that when he recorded the vocals for Back in Black, after he recorded them, he walked out of the studio, lit a cigarette, and pondered what he was going to do with his future, because he was convinced that there were no way vocals recorded like that would ever commercially sell and be accepted on a record. And Back in Black goes on to become one of the biggest selling records of all time.
Absolutely.
It's pretty remarkable.
He opened up a whole new genre of singing as well. You know, the thing is that he was not a Bon Scott clone. And I think that helped within the whole industry. There was a lot of goodwill towards AC/DC because of what had happened to him. And when they went in the studio, Mutt Lange just made sure, they said, we're not just going to make another AC/DC record, we have to make a statement. And he did a very similar thing with us after Pyromania. He actually said, look, it's your choice. He says, we do Pyromania 2 or we do, you know, we go and do, we've seen what Thriller had done the same year that Pyro came out. And he said, there's no reason you can't do the same thing. In other words, just have song after song after song that can hit this thing that was still, you know, a vibrant channel in MTV at the time. Not a game show channel.
Yeah.
Whatever it is now.
I have no idea what it is now, but it's not for me. Look, one of the things that I love, and we can go down a lot of rabbit holes because we're both big music fans. It's one of the many things I love about Joe is, in addition to being a great musician, he's also just a big fan. And that plays in exactly to the Down and Outs, which I want to talk about now. And in a few minutes, I'm going to play you on the show in its entirety, the lead single and the title track from the latest Down and Outs record, which is the third record. Now, I've had you on my show a number of times about the Down and Outs. Remember, you even brought me some Down and Outs beer at one point, which was quite delicious. Are you still doing?
Now, unless you've already drunk.
I still, it's delicious.
You know, I think I've got some left. They don't make it anymore, but they keep a hidden stock at the back of the porterhouse in Dublin.
Oh, okay.
So I go down there, so you got any left, and pull out a crate. And
there you go.
That's my New Year's party taken care of.
But for those that have not heard about the Down and Outs and what it is and its origins, Joe, why don't you educate the audience about this band, because it's something that's very much the fabric of how you grew up, and you're taking another step with it now, doing original material.
Yeah, the Down and Outs is basically a rock and roll band, just the same as Leopard is, but it's got a piano, and that's the main difference is the piano. How the band came about was, here's the 120-second synopsis. I got a phone call early 2009 from Ian and Trudy Hunter. Shh, don't say anything, but in October they're reforming. Now, I never got to see them the first time round, they being Mott the Hoople, right? So I'm very excited to see them. And I said, when? She says, it's in London in October, but they want you involved. And I said, well, okay. So I walk out and go, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in 35 years, Mott the Hoople. She goes, no. Those 5 different acts will be opening for them on the 5 nights. They want you to do the final night. Okay, how? Def Leppard can't do it. It would be ridiculous. It's their night. They don't want a band that's selling, essentially bigger than Mott were, opening for them. She says, no, the choir boys have offered their services to be your band. So you just pick some songs and we do this 45-minute set and then we're done and dusted. So I spent the summer when we were out on tour with Cheap Trick and Poison, I think, in the back of the tour bus with a guitar and the tapes of the songs. And I thought, what would Joe Elliott sat in the front row want to see Joe Elliott on the stage doing if he was opening for Mott the Hoople? And I thought, well, it's pretty simple. Everything that they did after they split up. So when Ian left, they carried on with Nigel Benjamin and Ray Majors on guitar and vocals and just dropped the Hoople and became Mott and did 2 albums. Ian went on to do a bunch of solo stuff. 2 albums in, Mott split and became British Lions. John Fiddler took over the lead vocals. So I picked 10 songs from those 3 artists and did those because then I'm not stepping on Mott's toes by doing a song that they're going to play themselves an hour later. And I didn't want to do Leopard stuff. It didn't feel appropriate to me. So I wanted it to be a Mott night, if you like. And we did the set, and that was it. We were done. That was it. Said goodbye till we went to the bar during the interval, and all the kids that had been watching pinned us all to the wall. One of them was actually crying. I can't believe I've heard those songs on stage. I haven't heard them since 1976 or whatever.
And real quick, let me jump in here because this is important context considering we're broadcasting right now to the U.S. and Canada. Mott the Hoople, British Lions, outside of a song or two, not well known in this country.
Well, in fairness, the British Lions actually sold about 400,000 copies of their debut album in America.
But it's not something people hear on classic rock radio.
It's not the Doobie Brothers or Peter Frampton. Absolutely not.
Although Mott the Hoople just did shows in America and did quite well, but
Cult. But then in the UK, they were big.
So that's my point. Is you talk about how important and people crying and how much this meant to you. That the band has a completely different reverence, if you will.
You can't
England,
compare it.
You grew up with it.
You can't compare it to something that's global like Bon Jovi or us or U2.
Right.
They did do okay. They were on the verge of becoming a big band. I mean, let's not forget in 73, 74, I've actually got pictures of the billboards that said Mott the Hoople, Aerosmith, New York Dolls at Madison Square Gardens. Right. So they did have a following, but it just didn't last a long time.
But it's like Status Quo or Slade, bands like that. Here in the U.S., virtually off the radar. But T-Rex
had one hit
song.
here.
Thin Lizzy, one
song. They were bigger than the Beatles for 3 years in the UK.
Right. So it's interesting how it's perceived differently. But in England, you growing up, this was incredibly important music.
Yeah, it was. To a bunch of us, it was our cult thing. So anyway, the guy dries his tears, and we move on. And I said to the guys after the gig had finished, after Mott had done, we went back to the hotel, we were having a drink, and I said to them, look, while these songs are still fresh in the DNA, shall we record them? And they all went, yes, to a man. They all said, yeah, absolutely. So they all went back to Bedford where they lived, went in the studio with a mate of theirs, got them done in 2 days, sent them over to me in Dublin. So me and Ronan pieced it all together, and then voila, we had My Regeneration 3 months later. We released it through a magazine in the UK, which was great because 96,000 people got it. And I did the maths and went, okay, like if 10% listen and 10% like it, we've got about 1,000 fans.
Was it through Classic Rock?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And we put it on sale as well 2 months later, and it went on sale over here. But more importantly, over here, we started getting traction on the radio, and England Rocks went top 5, and Overnight Angels went to number 1 on the Media Based Rock chart. So I'm like, okay, we've got a band here that I didn't expect to exist ever, is now actually charting and selling. This is nuts. Was not expecting that at all. But that, of course, we were all there going, wow, this is amazing. Guess we're going to make a second record. So then we did the further adventures of a couple of years later, where we could now delve into the Hoople catalogue because we're no longer opening for them. So that's where you've got things like Rock and Roll Queen and Marionettes and stuff like that. And then the band goes dormant for 5 years after the live album and the tour that we did in 2014. The mothership went crazy. And when you try and put the brakes on the mothership, like they would in space, it takes a couple of years for it to come to a
The mothership being Def Leppard.
Stop. Yeah, but not just mine. The Choir Boys revved up their thing, was doing really well in Europe and in the UK. Sheros is now in the band. Vixen is still working quite a lot. And Phil Martini, the drummer, is in a band called the Wayward Sons, whose new album coincidentally comes out the same day as the Down and Outs album. So everybody, when we keep getting asked, are you going to do tour dates? I've literally put in a diary together where I have to put a red cross where they're not available. And sadly, there's a lot of squares with a red cross in it, because trying to get all 6 of us where we're not working is proving to be quite hard. But doing the record, it wasn't such a bad thing, because there was no massive rush on the release. We had no label. We had no A&R man. We were just making this record, and it was going to come out when it came out. So when the Choir Boys maybe had a 3-week break, I could get the 3 guys over to my place for 2 or 3 days. They'd blitz everything. Cher did her bass at home. She's married to Bam from Dogs D'Amour. He engineered it all and just emailed it to me. We did the drums in the studio in London.
Beauty of technology, huh?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. But the fact is that I'd written the demos, I'd done the demos, I'd played the demos to the band. They really liked it. They'd signed off on the songs, the arrangements, everything like that. So it was an easy do to make the record. It just took it didn't take a long time to make the record. The record was probably made in 3 or 4 months. It was done over 5 or 6 years because I had no choice, But the kind of music that it is, and I think I told you this before, I'd be very disappointed if you think that anything sounds like it came after 1975.
Right.
There is no rush to put it out, because it's not like I'm going to, it's out of fashion now. It's never been in fashion.
Right.
It's a classic rock record that's supposed to sound like it would sound okay next to a Zeppelin song or a Stones song or a Leon Russell or an Elton John song. It's that kind of record.
It really, and I'm not saying this just because Joe's sitting here. I spent a little time with the record. It really is a great sounding record sonically. Ronan worked on it. You said Ronan McHugh.
Ronan McHugh has done Def Leppard for the last 20 years, and everything.
And your front of house as well.
He does our out front sound. He lives 8 minutes from me. He's got a studio in his back garden, which is like literally a shed, and he mixes stuff in 5.1 in there. We're linked in through the internet from his studio to mine, so I can walk into my studio and all this stuff starts moving. And it's him in his shed doing stuff. I'm like, what the hell? What are you doing? So we
check the faucet. You might have a camera there.
We're all. I thought about that. Yeah, we're all technology wise, it's just superbly set up. But he is a great interpreter of my ideas. For example, there's a track on the album called Music Box, which is this mad kind of vaudeville fairground instrumental that lasts about 1.5 minutes. And it started out as an acoustic track, which it does reappear later in the album. There's a couple of reprises on the album. That's me just getting my Townsend itch in, with the things that he did with like Tommy and Quadrophenia, the way he themed a record out. I wanted to do that. But I did the acoustic version of this song, and then I said, this would sound great with a recorder over the top. So I dug out my old school recorder, and I played the recorder. And then I said, we should put a fairground organ on this. And then we kept building it and building it and building it. And then eventually, he'd gone home, and then I phoned him up and going, I know how this song needs to sound. It needs to sound like you just got out of bed, and you've gone to the window to open the curtains, and when you look down in your garden, there's a clown looking up at you. And he went, I know exactly what you mean. And that is just a kind of a comical but a true story of like, I can say to him, it needs to sound like, and he'll go, okay, just give me a minute, whatever is, There's a great story about Mick Jagger saying the same thing to Chris Kimsey. It needs a bit more of this, and it needs a bit more of that. Okay, Mick, and he's a great interpreter. We work really well together. And when it was just the two of us and not having to do you know, a kind of a five-way thing like it is with Def Leppard. It was a lot easier because the guys in the Down and Outs just said, just go where you're going. It's not a solo album, but it was solo decisions, if you like. I played this stuff to them as we were doing it, and they're all going, sounds great to me. So
Well,
there
that's
was
what I
never
wanted
an
to ask you.
argument or anything.
There's another big factor of this too, which is the writing process. You wrote all the songs yourself,
Except for the
except for White Punks on Dope. You do a Tubes cover, which we'll touch on. But you know, of course, in Leopard, you're a co-writer on pretty much almost every song. When you sit down and you're writing a record yourself, it's got to be a whole different challenge. Correct me if I'm wrong. Than keeping in mind the Leopard machine and okay, Phil's bringing this in, Sav's bringing this in, and making it mesh. This is more of a singular vision as far as a writer.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, for the last, since 93, when we first started, you started seeing songs written by one person in the band. Like, I think maybe the first thing that came out was Two Steps Behind, and there was things like Mission.
Well, I remember Work It Out was Vivian had
But
just
that
joined
was-
the band, and it was a solo.
Yeah,
right?
but that was 96.
Right.
In 92, 93, we had Two Steps Behind, Miss You in a Heartbeat, which Phil brought to the table. I'd wrote a song called From the Inside, which was on the Retroactive album. We were starting to do that a little bit. So, and on the last album, I wrote We Belong, and on the previous records, I'd written things like Come Undone and Bad Actress and stuff like that. So we've all written songs on our own. It's just that when you write a song like Bad Actress, which sounds like AC/DC, it's going to be a Def Leppard song, you know, or Let Me Be the One, it sounds like a Leopard ballad, so it was going to work fine. But they were all written on acoustic guitars or electric guitars. The Down and Out stuff, the 7 of the songs, I sat at a piano with my very rudimentary skills and just started throwing my fingers in places where a Rick Wakeman or whatever would go, you can't do that. I said, why not? He says, well, you just can't. I said, well, watch. Oh, okay. I remember both Ian Hunter and Elton John over different periods of time have said to me, once you know what all the black notes do, you're screwed. And I don't know what all the black notes do yet. So I throw my
So you write
fingers in
predominantly
places.
on piano?
I did for this record, but I've written stuff on the piano before for Def Leppard, but we've transposed it into guitar.
Do you play guitar much when
Yeah.
you write? Do you write on guitar?
I
a lot?
wrote Boys Don't Cry, and this is How We Roll on guitar.
Okay.
But they're the only two. Obviously, you can tell when you listen to the record. The rest of them are all written with guitar in mind. I'm guessing the way that Elton John would. I mean, when you listen to Love Lies Bleeding, Funeral for a Friend, it's obviously a very piano-based song. When you listen to Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, you could argue, well, it sounds like Davy Johnson wrote it.
Right.
Because it's a guitar song, you know.
right.
So having all that knowledge in the back of my mind, it's like, well, it doesn't really matter as long as it works.
Right.
There's Boys Don't Cry is a total guitar song, but there's Jerry Lee Lewis ding, ding, ding piano all the way through it, which makes it sound nothing like Def Leppard. So, you know, it's kind of like the Choir Boys or like the Faces or the Stones when Nicky Hopkins gets involved. It just adds another flavor or a different dimension. It takes them in a different place. But when I sat to write these songs, I was only writing them to get them out of my head. It was only when I was maybe 3 or 4 songs into this writing process, which would have been about 5 years ago, I went, you know what? These could be Down and Out songs. I wasn't specifically tailoring them for that, but they just tailored themselves. So I think there was a little thing in there going, yeah, this is Down and Outs. You just don't know it yet, you know. Because the third album, we had discussed doing another covers record, but not Mott. We were going to just go off on a tangent and do Band on the Run and Rubber Bullets by 10cc or whatever. But we did say, if we ever do any more covers, we got to do White Punks. So White Punks on Dope was chosen to be recorded before I'd written a note for this record. But then I started writing, and the first song I wrote was Another Man's War, musically, which, because it's kind of a little bit like England Rocks in the sense of it's a honky-tonk driving piano beat with stabby guitar parts over the top, similar to England Rocks, though it sounds nothing like England Rocks, you know.
Right.
And then that just, okay, I've got one down now. Feel more confident that I can actually bang tunes out on this big old thing, and they make sense, you know. So I just kept going.
Another Man's War actually was just released, so you can actually hear that The complete album's out on October 11th. We'll talk a little bit more about Down and Outs with Joe, and then we'll get into few more Leopard things, and we'll take some questions from the audience. So we have well over an hour left to go. But since we've been talking so much about Down and Outs, now would be a great time so everybody could hear the brand new single and the title track. This is how we roll from the Down and Outs. We'll come back with more with Joe Elliott live from Los Angeles on Trunk Nation on Volume right after this. Sirius XM 106. Always great to be in LA for our monthly broadcast here on Trunk Nation. The LA Invasion coming to you from the brand new Sirius XM LA studios and our performance space, which is called The Garage. Joe, I don't know if they told you, but normally I do this on the patio at the Rainbow, and since we have this brand new space, we're christening it with you. So,
oh, thanks. I thought the Rainbow would have been fun.
We'll do well, you're welcome to come to the Rainbow.
I'll come back again
anytime.
And we'll do the Rainbow.
Did you used to hang there when Leopards first started coming to the U.S.?
I've been there. Well, the first steps I ever took in America, other than the airport and the hotel, were the Rainbow.
Was that right?
Yeah, 18th of May, 1980. We checked into the Chateau Marmont, so we walk up the steps into the lobby, and there's a photograph behind the counter of Led Zeppelin sat on the steps, so we just walked up, and we were like, okay.
Yeah.
Dump the bags, go to the Rainbow. Me and Clarky went to the Rainbow. It's 7 o'clock, so there's nobody in. We're the only two people. We went upstairs because we'd heard about the Crow's Nest where
up there, yeah.
Lennon and Alice and all that lot used to hang. And there's 4 girls, frosted blonde 1980s hair in the corner, just minding their own business. And me and Steve walked up to the bar, and the barman says, "Get you a drink?" And we said, "Yeah, give us 2 vodka and oranges, please." And he said, "You mean screwdrivers?" I said, "No, 2 vodka and oranges. If I wanted a screwdriver, I'd go to a hardware store." I didn't know that that's what they were called here at the time, you know. And because with our Yorkshire accents and all that lot, these girls who are 8 as far away as we are now started shuffling over going, "You guys English?" "Yep." "You in a band?" "Yep." "What band is it?" Blah, 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 blah. It's like, anyway, an hour later, off we go back to the Chateau Marmont. Wow, this didn't happen in Sheffield.
Was that for On Through the Night? Was that when you first came
We were
over?
about to open for Pat Travis at the now long gone Santa Monica Civic, which I was so impressed with because I had a Bowie bootleg from the Santa Monica Civic. I'm going to stand where David stood. Oh. Yeah.
I just saw Pat. I was telling you during the commercial break, I hosted a show with Deep Purple this past weekend who sounded phenomenal. And Pat was one of the opening acts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he's sounding great. And he actually came out with Purple and played Smoke on the Water at the end of the night. And good to see Pat still out there. He had some great stuff.
I loved his first 2 records.
Yeah.
I saw him live in Sheffield on both. He was opening for the sensational Alex Harvey band in 76, and then I saw him with Nick McBrain on drums.
Yeah.
And 77 on the Making Magic tour. And then 3 years later, we're opening for him on the Snorting Whiskey tour, whatever it was called, in 1980. It was all the way up the West Coast. It was lovely. We started off at the Santa Monica Civic. We ended up in an arena in Portland, Oregon. And that's when people started, when the lights went down, they started screaming our song titles out. And we're like going, oh, okay, we're starting to make a bit of headway here. But he was the first one to give us a break. And then a couple of weeks later with Priest and then and the Scorp and Ted Nugent through that whole summer with the Scorps. And then, it just moved on from there.
If you guys missed, people listening, you missed Pat was on the show. I had him on this show on Friday of last week. So anybody that missed it, you can grab it on the app on demand. It was a lot of fun talking to him. He's got a lot of good stories as well. So we heard the Down and Outs, obviously, as we went into this last break. And this is how we roll the title track to the new album, the 3rd, all original material. Again, it's out everywhere October 11th. And it does have one cover, as you mentioned, White Punks on Dope, a great cover of the Tubes tune. I'm wondering the significance of that song for you. I saw once on YouTube, there's a British TV show, Old Grey Whistle Test. That's British, right? Yeah. There's a classic clip of the Tubes performing that. Did you see that as a kid?
That's where I first heard the song. I watched it on Whistle Test, and I saw the character Quaalude with his big heels and the wig and the cardboard guitar.
Yeah.
But it was, I was 16 or something like that, so of course I'm very impressionable, and I'm just looking at this. But I'm listening to the chords, and I'm going, it's got that kind of classic glam rock, Bowie-esque thing about it that was leading towards punk as well. And it just really struck a chord with me. It's always been something that I've wanted to do. There was 20 odd years ago, Leopard nearly covered it because we were all going, that'd be a great song to do, but we just never got around to it, you know. So it's always been on my radar to do it. But things happen for a reason, I believe. And this is the perfect time for us to do this song. I think the fact that the album flows the way it does, with that being essentially the last song on the album, it's the perfect spot for it. As I said earlier about the Townsend thread that he'll do with, you know, the Tommies and the Quadrophenias and whatever. I've established by then that, yeah, okay, you're a standalone band. You're now not relying on Ian songs or Mott songs or whatever. We have just played 40 minutes of stuff that I've written for this band that stands up in my eyes. So now it's okay. This is the encore. You know, we're going to blast you with this classic Tubes track that's it's been in my, you know, everybody knows Mott's my favorite band of all time, and Dudes is probably my favorite song, but this is very close to being my second favorite song of all time. So, and it's another little itch that gets scratched, you know.
Yeah. Did you ever hear Motley Crue's version of it? Because they covered it a number of years ago.
No, but I'm now becoming aware of the fact that they've done it because people are saying, "Oh, you know." Actually, somebody said to me, "You've covered a Motley Crue song."
Oh, jeez. Well, people think Motley Crue covered Teaser,
You know.
Tommy Bolin, and people think that's a Motley song as well.
Then I'm picking their brains going, okay, oh, maybe one of these songs sounds like Home Sweet Home to them or something. I don't know, because of the piano.
Right.
And they went, no, White Punks on Dome. And I went, that's not a Motley Crue song. And they said, well, they did it. I said, okay, great. Nikki, I do apologize, but I've never heard it.
Were the Tubes for you? I mean, so much of what made an impression on you as a kid, logically, was British bands. Were the Tubes one of the bigger ones that was not a British band that made an impression?
Well, yeah, because they actually sounded like a British band. I think that's sort of, it's like Sparks sounded British to me. Well, they were. I mean, other than Ron and Russell Mael, who were from Los Angeles, they moved to London and they picked up a British band for their first 2-3 albums. With the Tubes, even when you're listening to like TV is King and Turn Me On, the things that Rundgren produced in 1979, and it's kind of it's very synthesizer pop, a bit like what the Cars were doing. But even that leans towards what Gary Newman was doing and sounds a bit like the Vapors, you know, Turning Japanese, which was a very British thing. So the Tubes, well, I guess you could say it's transatlantic. They didn't sound American the way that, say, the Doobie Brothers do. Or even, God bless him, Peter Frampton sounds American, and he's from London.
Right.
You know, he went to school with David Bowie, but he sounds like an American artist. You know, the Tubes always came across to me as alien, like Bowie and Sparks and Roxy music. It's alien music. It's from another planet.
I always wonder too, like with bands like the Tubes and T-Rex and Bowie having such a big impact on you. You never went down really the theatrical road, though, did you? You never glammed it up with, or did you? And we don't know about it with the whole. Did you ever put on a crazy outfit or something? Or?
Well, when there's a video of the first, before we put the album out, our record company put us in a room this big with like Rent a Crowd, like 5 fans, and they make it look like there's 5,000. And the stuff that we were wearing was just hilarious. I had this thing that with these silver leaves stitched on it, and Steve was wearing these rainbow pants with this rainbow jacket. It was just bonkers. But we picked them all out. We all go down Carnaby Street and whatever, going, I want this, I want that. They get somebody in to stitch it all together, and it's like, we were trying to look like Xandra Rhodes stuff for Queen, but it just didn't work for us. We never wanted to be denim and leather, and we weren't theatrical in the sense of like Bowie when he did like Glass Spider. But we certainly didn't want to just stand there and play our instruments. You know, we'd seen too much. Even when you watch old clips of T-Rex or Bowie on Top of the Pops, they're not moving because they have to be singing to the camera. But they're dressed in such a way that they look like they're running all over the stage because they're just, you can't take your eyes off them. Bowie had the red hair, Bolan had the feather boa and the glitter stuck all over his face and stuff like that. They were just strikingly visual. So we were always kind of tempted with that. And even though we did it in a much more blue-collar way, when you think about when we hit, success, if you like, with the Photograph video, the Union Jack shirt made a massive impression all over the world, you know. which we thought was hilarious because like we've got all these Americans buying the Union Jack shirt while we were touring the States. And the only reason I bought that shirt is because we had a £25 budget each for the video, the wardrobe for photograph. And I'd been down King's Road, and I think it was Malcolm McLaren's old shop, Sex, it was renamed, and there it was, all this punk gear, and I had £7 left, and the shirt was $6.99. And that's why I bought it. But it worked, and once you do the slow motion leap off the drum riser, and it's just forever burnt into people's retina because it was shown on MTV so much, it became iconic as much as a cape worn by Fred, or you know, some of the stuff that Bowie wore over the years. So I wouldn't say theatrical, but always aware of making, don't look like your road crew.
Right.
You know, only going through airports, that's fine.
Right.
Cap on, you know, false teeth, whatever you got to do to get through. You know.
Joe Elliott is my guest, and we have another hour with Joe, so we have a lot more to do. We got a lot more to talk about, and we have a great audience sitting in front of us here in Los Angeles. We're going to let them get involved in the conversation a little bit as well. Again, the Down and Outs album, This Is How We Roll, is out on October 11th. So you can pre-order now as you do and get it in any configuration that you might want. And you heard a track from it already in the first hour. It is really a killer rock and roll record that you guys need to check out. We got more with Joe Elliott live from Los Angeles on the Trunk Nation LA Invasion right after this. Hour number 2 of Trunk Nation, live from Los Angeles this month, coming to you from the all-new SiriusXM studios in LA. And the brand new performance space, which is called The Garage. We have audio, we have video working, and we are live across America and Canada on SiriusXM 106 volume, talking rock with you. And my guest for this show is Joe Elliott, talking about Down and Outs, talking about Def Leppard. Is it the Down and Outs or just Down and Outs?
Just Down and Outs.
Just Down and Outs.
Just Down and Out.
Down and Outs. October 11th. This
It's
is
like
how we roll.
The Def Leppard either. That's how it's sometimes in Europe. Oh, you are in the band, the Def Leppard.
Oh, really?
Yes, I suppose I am. Yes.
So get that record on October 11th. Will there be, I mean, you mentioned the challenge, which any people have who have a side band to making the commitment to be able to do live shows and freeing up the schedule and the conflicts. But have you found some dates on the calendar without Red X's?
Not yet, no.
Not yet.
But I, in fairness, I haven't had time. I know this year's a no-no. Early next year's tricky. There is a possibility before Leopard start next summer that I might be able to do some late spring, early summer stuff. So the further away it is, the more chance I've got to say, don't book anything yet. These things are already booked for these guys. So it's like, at the end of the day, it's not that big a deal right now. It'll become a bigger deal later on. When I get home, when I'm finished doing this round of press and I can actually sit down with a cup of tea and get my thing out and go, okay, let's really get to work on this. Then I can get hold of them all and say, I just spotted a window here. Can we book this? And then I can get on to everybody, Mike, the manager, everybody say, right, this is the hole where we can do it. Chances of it being in the States is slim, but you know, you never say never. One day, the great thing about this project is we could do a tour or a festival 2 years down the road. It wouldn't matter because it's not like it's one of those kind of projects like you've missed your window.
Right.
It is an ongoing thing that's timeless. So it's not tied down to you've got to do it now, you know.
But, you know, you were saying something earlier about Down and Outs where you were saying, well, it should sound like it's from the 70s, and I expect it to sort of occupy that space. But what's happening now, I'm very, very, very encouraged as a rock fan about what's happening now. I feel there's a great wave of young rock bands. I'm seeing them. I'm talking to them. I'm hearing them that I'm really encouraged by. And a lot of them are channeling sounds and riffs and production styles from the 70s. And so you can really never say never. Like, stranger things have happened. Who would think Tool released their new album? There's not a song on it under 10 minutes. It sold 100,000 physical copies on CD. The label can't even make them anymore. So you never know. Would it completely shock you if this record came out and did something like that?
Well, I'd be a little shocked if it kind of sold at all, because it's not the kind of project where I'm expecting.
Are you a glass half empty Joe
No,
guy?
no, I'm actually a very positive, but I'm a realist.
Right,
And
right.
when I did the deal with the album with Universal, I said to him, look, I'm a realist. I'm not expecting this to do what the Traveling Wilburys did. It doesn't have that kind of wrong time period. Look at the lineup that they had. This is just me, little old me, stepping out of Leopard with a few friends, choir boys, Wayward Sons, and Vixens on board. And I've just made a heartfelt album that comes right from here, the heart, with as much energy as I've put into anything I've ever done. So I know it's a good record. But am I expecting it to sell like a Phil Collins solo album when he left Genesis, or when he was still in Genesis? No, I'm not.
But my point, you never
it only
know.
takes one of these songs to end up in what I like to call it, the slab scene in NCIS or whatever.
Right.
Some poignant bit of music, and all of a sudden things start happening for you. So, in fairness, on the pre-orders, it's been very well received.
Yeah.
It was number 2 on Amazon's Movers and Shakers, and in the top 10 pre-orders. So, yeah, with a bit of luck, it will do a little bit more than say the first 2 albums sold okay because we had a lot of radio play. I think this one may do better, but I'm not going to hang myself
No,
if
of
it
course
doesn't
not.
work out, you know.
And you've got this other day job called Def Leppard where
Exactly.
you're not
the
sweating
great
it
thing
out.
is, for me as a person, it's just an extension. It's not like, oh, this is my new direction, or I've left the band and this is what I'm doing. It's just something to go along with. It's a companion piece. You know, it's not getting in the way of Def Leppard. I've done it in such a way. I've done it when other people were maybe off playing golf or riding their bike. I was going in the studio and making a record, so it's not impacted on anything we would have been doing. It's like this isn't out instead of a Def Leppard record. There is no Def Leppard record to release, so I'm doing this in my spare time, and that's how I have to think of it. Now, the label, having said that, have been very supportive of this record. They said, we appreciate your expectations, and that's why we're prepared to put a lot of work in, because they heard it, they like it, and they're going to put as much as they can behind it. Because I said, I'll do the same. I'll go wherever you want me to go to talk about this thing, which is why I'm here now. Because I want people to be able to go, okay, this sounds like it could be interesting. If they haven't heard it yet, I've got to sell it in such a way that makes them want to hear it, not just on reputation of what I did 30 years ago. It's got to be about, this is me at a piano. So that in itself is like, you'd hope, if glass half full, that's an intriguing prospect. Because trust me, I'm no Elton John, but I can write. You know, because I'm not Eddie Van Halen either, but I can play a guitar enough to write songs on a guitar.
Right.
It's Bob Dylan can't play guitar in the sense of Michael Schenker,
Right.
but he can write brilliant songs on those 5 or 6 chords that he knows. And I'm the same with both of those. The more I play the piano, the better I get. The more I get adventurous in the writing department. And some of those songs, they really do come from a totally different headspace to anything that I could have written on a guitar.
And of course, what my only point about saying that is whenever anybody thinks they've got it all figured out about where we are in the music industry today, you get thrown a curveball. You have no idea. You could never see it coming. Along those lines, a couple years ago, maybe not even that long ago, Leopard finally allowed the music to be put on streaming services.
Yeah,
Your music,
2 years ago, this January coming.
2 years ago. Now, in retrospect on that decision, have you felt any impact from that? Have you met younger fans who discovered Def Leppard through that? Are you pleased with making that decision to go on streaming?
We couldn't have made that decision at a better time. We couldn't have done it before because there was no relationship to make the decision with, because we got burned 10 years ago. But a new regime came in who were on our side and wanted to kind of dig up the deal
Talking
again.
about at the label.
Yeah, the label. But the people that are running the label now, I mean, Bruce has been at the label when this all went down badly, and he was like on our side. You know, he was like very apologetic that it didn't work out. But then there's a new guy came over in the UK, which is the label. That's the branch we're signed to. We're signed to the UK. So they have to work in tandem with America. And once we got that all into place, then it was kumbaya all the way along, you know. And it's worked out brilliantly. In that short period of, 22 months, we got I don't know, I haven't met any 10-year-olds that discovered us through Spotify yet, but I get all the other figures, I get the grown-up figures, and we hit 2 billion streams about 3 months ago.
Wow,
And so maybe it wouldn't have had the impact had we done it 10 years ago. It would have just been drip feed.
Right.
This made it a big deal. And it
Right.
gave us the opportunity to put out the new best of. We went into, did sessions for people when we did Personal Jesus for a bit of fun, and it became a big part of our thing for the last 18 months, So it opened up a whole set of doors that were like, okay, this is exciting, when we had the energy to go in there and do it. I'm not fussed that we didn't do the digital deal 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. It was perfect when we did it last year.
You are going to be hitting a milestone in a year or less.
Another
40
one.
years since the first record. 40 years since On Through the Night next year. 40 years since High and Dry, in a little more than that. Have you thought about that? Have you thought about doing anything special to celebrate the first or second record when those anniversaries come up?
You can't see my eyebrows on the radio.
There are cameras here, which eventually will...
Well, thinking about it, we thought about it. You see, you've got to plan these things ahead. We thought about this about a year and a half ago. And there's going to be a celebratory release. I don't know how much of this I can say right now. I might be breaking
Don't
protocol.
worry, nobody's listening. It's fine.
But I will say this much. There's as a companion piece to On Through the Night, there is a brand new, just mixed live performance from the Oxford Theatre
From
in
that tour?
1980.
From that tour?
From that tour.
Wow.
Which has never been heard, never. And it is what it's warts and all, is what it is. It's us live in 90. You can't really, we were discussing off mic, weren't we, about lip syncing or overdubbing.
Oh, we'll touch on that.
You can't have it. You can't expect a 59-year-old me to go in and clean up a 20-year-old
Nor should
vocal.
you. Nor should you.
You know what I mean? So it is what it is. But I tell you this much: the band, as I said in the liner notes, when you peer through the curtain of uncertainty that my voice was back in those days, there is a fantastic band on stage. And Rick, the two-armed Rick Allen with Sav, was some rhythm section considering he was 16 years old and Sav was 17, I think, maybe 18. And Pete and Steve were 17 and 18 years old. It was some band. And when you hear it, it's spectacular.
Well, I'm curious about
is.
this because the very first time I saw Def Leppard was on the High and Dry tour, and you were opening up for Blackfoot at the Palladium in New York City.
Right.
And that was my first exposure live to the band. So at that point, you had 2 records out. When you did live shows for On Through the Night, only 1 record. Was the entire set music from the first record, or was there a cover or 2?
No, there was no. The album's about 42 minutes, so when you're on stage, it's 45. So give an intro tape and a bit of talking in between.
Right.
That was pretty much it. We didn't necessarily even play all the album on stage. We played most of it, I think. In fact, you could tell me better than most. There's a guy just put the Fresno show up on YouTube.
There's a lot of stuff coming out from that city. There was
that was
Van
the second
Halen.
ever gig we did. We started at Santa Monica Civic on the 20th, so this would have been 21st or 22nd of May 1980, and we were playing Lady Strange.
Oh,
which,
wow.
Which we hadn't recorded,
Right.
but we'd written. So there would have been a couple of songs that we dropped off because maybe as an opening act for Pat Travis, we thought the overture at 7 minutes and a bit poncy prog like Rush was going to be a little bit of overkill for that kind of crowd. So we probably dropped out and threw maybe Ride Into the Sun off the EP and a new song in instead. I must watch that thing. I've seen 10 minutes of it. It doesn't look too bad, actually.
I don't know who's doing that, but there's this guy, for people that don't know what Joe's talking about, on YouTube, and it just says Fresno Media Restoration across the front or something, but a venue called Selland Arena in Fresno.
Mm-hmm.
And so far he has posted, it's single camera footage, but it looks and sounds amazing. And he's posted Van Halen opening for Sabbath. He posted UFO, who I don't know who, if they were headlining or playing with, but the Obsession tour with Schenker. And now I didn't know he posted something of you guys now.
Ours has been kind of floating around for about 2-3 years.
And it's from On Through the Night.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
wow, that I've got.
It's hilarious because there's like one spotlight and it's on me all night, even during the guitar solos. And I'm watching like going, move. Come on, earn your money. But what gets me is like you think back to 1980. How do you sneak something this big?
Size of a brick.
No, it'd have been this. It would have been the size of a proper TV camera from those days. How do you get and then tape it to the balcony or whatever he did, and nobody go, "Excuse me, sir, you can't do that."
Well, in the Van Halen,
I guess he owned the venue.
I don't know, but in the Van Halen one, at the end when they're done playing, the audience stands up and he yells at the guy in front of him to sit down. You hear it over the microphone because like sit down, and they're applauding because Van Halen was so mind blowing at that time, of course, and he's worried about his camera. But it's funny. You think about back to those days, whether we were kids bootlegging stuff, sneaking cameras in or recorders or whatever. In retrospect, when you have something like YouTube and you can get a peek into something like that from 40 years ago, it's so cool, even if it's not the best footage and even if somebody's drifting in and out, it's just so cool. It puts me so much into my childhood at that time and place.
Depends what kind of haircut you've got at the time. Or if you're wearing leggings. Or you got a perm or a mullet, then it's not so cool.
What are we talking about, Joe? I don't know anybody who ever did that. That would be silly, wouldn't it?
I don't know.
But
I love fight. I mean, you have to respect it from a fan's point of view.
Oh yeah.
I would maybe look at the Kinks or the Stones or the Who, and Townsend might like, oh my God, what am I wearing? And I'd look at it going, that looks awesome. Because it's like you can't. We really none of us should actually judge our fashion sense from back then because nobody laughed at the time, so it must have been cool.
Yeah.
It just became uncool.
That's why I absolutely hate and despise.
Mullets will come back. I can guarantee it.
But that's why I absolutely hate and despise and rail against the term hairband or hair metal because I'm like, what are you talking about? Like everybody looked like Ozzy looked like that at that time.
I just went through this morning. It's it's why when I do my show for Deep Tracks, I said I won't do it on him. I won't do it on Hair Nation. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I know other people that have said I won't even talk to the, and now I've heard rumor that they're actually going to scrap it and change its name, which would be nice.
Somebody may have gotten in their ear about that.
Yeah.
And sitting in this room that's not named Joe
But I said
Elliott,
the same thing. So I said, okay, so Iggy Pop is hair metal because he's got hair down here. Robert Plant is hair metal. So is Dolly Parton. It's like it's the most stupid term I've ever heard. And when I was asked, like, do you feel like embarrassed to be part of it? I said no, because we weren't ever part of it. For a start, when that was all going off on Sunset Strip, we were living next door to a windmill in Holland recording the Hysteria album. We couldn't have been further removed from all that, and we didn't have internet back then, so we didn't know this was happening, because living in Holland you really don't see that stuff. We had Kylie and Jason doing their stuff on in fact, MTV hadn't even started until 1987. So when we were recording in 85, 86, and early 87...
In England, you didn't see it till 87?
MTV started August the 1st, 1981, right? It started August the 1st, 1987, which is my birthday. I remember this because we were on a barge in Amsterdam, and Elton John sang Happy Birthday to me.
That doesn't suck.
No, it does not. He's got a great voice.
Yeah, I heard that.
And
he's written some
but
songs.
So, the album came out August the 3rd, but up to recording it through 86, early 87, all we would see was the odd TV, like the Dutch version of Top of the Pops or the Dutch version of Midnight Special or whatever. You didn't know all this stuff was going. We couldn't buy Cream or Circus magazine over there. It was only when we got to America we were like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah.
Who's that girl? Brett who? Oh, it's Brett. Okay. And then you learn, it's like, okay, it's gone a bit through the roof.
Yeah.
It really wasn't like that in 83. And we left after San Diego Jack Murphy Stadium in September. We didn't set foot back in America until we played somewhere on the East Coast, first gig of the Hysteria tour.
Yeah.
So we missed an entire 4 years of what the hell is going on here.
Yeah.
We missed it all. Because then we played huge catch-up. Because by the time we were watching MTV on the Hysteria tour, we're starting to learn about these bands that are like now 2 years old, like Rat, Warrants, Autograph, and Bon Jovi did break big, so we knew who Bon Jovi were. We did shows with John in '86 around Europe, so he was the exception to the rule because he was worldwide. But all the bands that were like million sellers in America, but nothing anywhere else, we started seeing them and to me, they all kind of look the same. You know?
Well, Leopard was such a huge part of MTV. We all know that. But the very first time I saw Leopard on MTV was for the live videos from High and Dry for Bringing on the Heartbreak and I think there was maybe one
Let
other
It Go,
one. Let
High
It Go,
and Dry, and
yes. So
Heartbreak.
just basically looked like it was just one that you guys set up and played
Yeah,
all
it was,
three.
it was. We were playing a gig at the Liverpool Empire, and we set up during sound check, and they put the lights up, and we brought in Rent a Crowd again, and put 30, 40 kids down the front, and then we just ran through the songs 3 or 4 times, and then the guy took it away and edited it. And the next thing we know, it's on MTV in America.
But when you then, with Pyromania, the production obviously becomes something with videos, and you do Photograph and Rock of Ages and all that. So you're not even seeing what's happening in America with those videos because you don't get the channel in England, right? So
No.
but had you heard? Did you come to
Well,
the
yeah,
US?
but we were over opening for Billy Squire by May.
I saw that show as well.
And Peter Mensch had a telex machine in his basement that was the size of about 10 washing machines. So we'd have bits of paper spewing out going, they're playing it on MTV. We knew that this was happening. While we were making Pyromania in London in 1982, we were getting feedback constantly that High and Dry had started to sell again. Because when MTV opened in 81, they had like 7 videos to play. And 3 of them were ours, you know.
Yeah.
So basically, what happened was Heartbreak specifically got played a lot. Then he started getting requested on radio, and then he started getting more requests on MTV, and he kept bouncing back. And eventually, Bring on the Heartbreak became a kind of a mini hit. But what he did more importantly was set up the next record. And because Pyromania is the album that it is, and we all kind of had a feeling that we needed to up the ante with the video. We had David Mallet, who you've obviously heard of. David did all the things he did like Let's Dance for Bowie in '83 as well. We had him in, he's done thousands of great rock videos. He came in and shot Photograph and Rock of Ages. They were both shot December '82. And when we saw the finished article, we just thought, this is amazing. You know, a lot of the bands from the 70s were very reluctant to make videos, but we were the new guys. So we saw it like Duran Duran did. It's like, this is probably more important than the record. Now, it turns out they weren't, but they went hand in hand, because lots of people in America would sit down and listen to the new song by watching it.
Oh, it was huge.
And it worked beautifully for us. Duran Duran, Michael Jackson, ZZ Top with the spinning, fuzzy guitars and those cars. I mean, it was a fantastic way to get you. And they were a band that had been around for a long time.
Yeah.
They became like a new band. It worked great for Aerosmith after the Run DMC thing. They became like a new band again.
Yeah, there were a ton of bands like that.
But we watched it all by having VHS tapes sent to us.
Yeah.
And then we might see it once or twice on some specialist show in the UK.
Yeah, I tell younger people all the time, I say you cannot overestimate the importance of MTV to these bands that you love back in the day and how much that moved the needle. But we're going to go to a break here real quick. But you talking about the old videos a second, something just came to me. There was a bridge video between High and Dry and Pyromania, and it was Me and My Wine when that got added to High and Dry because the record started to sell again, right? So that video, which is a fun video, I remember you're in a house.
It was
or something.
we weren't even going to. We remade the video for Bring on the Heartbreak.
Right.
We made a kind of a production video.
And you remixed the song.
We remixed the song, and for some bizarre reason, Mutt decided to remix this song that had been the B-side of Something Off High and Dry. I don't know why he did it, but he did, and just for fun, I said, we should shoot a video. And we shot the whole thing in about 4 hours. We had a house in Dublin. The outside shot of the house where I go, thank you, or whatever at the end, is the house that we all lived in for 6 months to write Hysteria. But the interior shots were in a different shot in a different place. But we just made it up as we went along. Walking down the stairs and me slapping Phil's face, totally wasn't. That's why he goes, what? It wasn't scripted, but I didn't hit him hard,
Yeah.
But me singing it at the vacuum cleaner was something I've always wanted to do because I used to do that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because it looked like a microphone. And I'd seen these people on TV like Engelbert Humperdinck or whoever, and my mum would leave the vacuum out, and I'd stand in front of it going, please release me. And, so I said, I'm going to sing it to a vacuum cleaner on this video. I got to do it. So again, we all got our wiggles out on that video.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's still a lot of fun to see. All right, Joe Elliott is here. We still have some more time left to go here. One more thing from me when we come back from the break, and then we're going to turn it over to our studio audience. Live from Los Angeles, Trunk Nation LA Invasion, Joe Elliott, Down and Outs. We're talking Leopard. We spent a lot of time in the first hour on Down and Outs. Played the song. You can always grab it on the app. If you missed anything, of course, the entire show is available to you if you just tuned in and may say, oh my God, I missed that stuff. So you can always grab it on the replay on the app. But check out Down and Outs, the new album. This Is How We Roll is coming out on October 11th. All original material this time around, except for the Tubes cover, which we talked about before as well. We'll get some audience questions going. One more thing from me when we come back as well. That's anybody who knows me knows it's a hot button issue for me that I am railing against, and I always give incredible props to this man and his band for, let's just say, keeping it real. We'll talk about that when we come back on Trunk Nation. Okay, we're back. Live on Trunk Nation here on Volume. So anybody that has been listening to me in the last year or so knows that I am completely, as a rock fan, and only speaking as a rock fan, I'm not a musician, but I am completely opposed to what I view as an epidemic happening in rock music right now, and that is bands basically faking it. Half of what you're hearing coming off of pre-recorded tracks. It's the most un-rock and roll thing. It's not what we pay for. It doesn't make any sense to me. I can't even calculate it and comprehend it, and sadly, a lot of fans don't even know how rampant it is. What's amazing to me about Def Leppard is, and I've said this so many times, if any band out there could almost be given a pass for doing it because of the way your records were recorded, it would be you. But you guys don't, and you proudly don't. But you were telling me during one of the last breaks that even though you don't, there's still people that accuse you of doing it because of how much work you all put into singing. And that's got to frustrate you. But I have seen musicians come out, and I'm seeing it more and more because artists like yourself and Def Leppard that actually put the work in and pride themselves on doing it real and live, coming out and owning it and saying, hey, what you're hearing. I mean, Sebastian Bach is on tour right now, and he actually put in his press release, everything you're going to hear tonight is absolutely going to be live. I'm going to really sing. I'm not, people owning it for doing it live, which they should. Your take on all of this, because were you ever tempted to go down that route? I know how much work you put into keeping it real. Were you ever tempted to go down that road? Joe just mouthed the words no. Was that your track, Joe? Joe is now on tracks, ladies and gentlemen. He's just going to pretend he's answering the question.
In my career as a whatever I am, singer, frontman, whatever, we've made videos for MTV. We mime them. Of course we do. Everybody does that. That's what you do because you're shooting a piece of film. You're not going to sing it over and over. It wouldn't make any sense. Live, we use some samples for certain songs, but not vocally.
Nothing wrong with that, of course.
It's nothing that, say, Geddy Lee wouldn't do in Rush. Sav's got pedals. If anybody's seen his live, you see he's got like a piano kind of thing at two of his mics. He uses that to play synth stuff on things like Die Hard, on Sugar, and on a couple of the tracks, Rock On, there's a bunch of things.
I'm not talking about any of that stuff.
Rick's got some loops on things like Rocket. He's got loops. If anybody deserves it, with one arm, he uses a few loops on things like Rocket, but everything else he plays it like you would play it if you were a drummer.
Right.
We've been accused many times of miming. It used to really bug us that they go, oh, the keyboards are on tape or they're on a sample or something like that. And then we started thinking, well, you know what? It's kind of like a left-handed compliment.
Sure.
If they think that they're on tape, we know that they're not. So we've got a clear conscience. They must be pretty good out front if they think they're on tape. We've got a great sound engineer in Rona McHugh. Do we use clever techniques like spin-offs and reverbs to make it sound real? Yeah, no more or no less than, say, Zeppelin used to do, or Queen. We use things to enhance our normal sound. You've seen the movie It's Gonna Get Loud, the bit where Edge says, this is what my guitar sounds like without electricity. And you take all then it's the same with us. We use things to make the vocals sound bigger. We use ADTs and things like that to make them sound like 10 people, but it's still us singing them. There's no fake voice underneath there.
Yeah.
We don't need to.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I needed help when I was on the boat. If we were miming, I would have done that gig and nobody would have known any better. But I couldn't do it. So Andrew manfully stood up from Last in Line,
Andrew
and we had
Freeman.
Eric Martin and Kip got up and did a couple. It was great watching the two of them with their reading glasses on, trying to sing fooling and read their own handwriting.
Wait, I got a better one.
It was
than that.
just hilarious.
There's a better
you know?
one. That what Joe's referencing, for those that don't know, is there was a few years ago there was a Def Leppard cruise, and I was one of the hosts on the cruise, and the big night comes where Joe and Def Leppard are playing. It's their night. It's the night in the theater. And I hear sound check outside of the door, and somebody, I'll never forget this, somebody comes running out, grabs my shoulder and says, "Hey, come in. Joe wants to talk to you." I said, "Joe Elliott?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "They're playing." He goes, "Come in." And I walked in, and there was a 4-piece Def Leppard sound checking, and you in the corner, and you waved me over, and you came up to me. I don't remember. You got my ear, and you said, "Anybody on this ship you know that can sing Def Leppard songs?" And I go, You're the singer in Def Leppard, Joe, and you're just like, can't do it.
Yeah, not that night. Well, we did a kind of a 4-song acoustic set the day before,
Yeah.
and that's when I realized there was something wrong because I couldn't even talk, never mind sing.
But you watched your own band play as a 4-piece.
I introduced them on
night.
stage.
Right, I introduced you. You came out and
And
introduced
then I stood
them.
at the side of stage going, "This is really weird." And now Rick Savage has got one over on me because he's done one more gig than me.
Oh, jeez.
You know.
Would you ever do another cruise?
No, God, no.
You didn't enjoy
Well,
it?
maybe. I mean, yes.
Rick's
as
on it all the time.
Yeah, right.
He is.
As time goes by, your opinion on things softens, but I didn't have any fun on it. I mean, Jimmy Bain died.
Yeah, well.
You know, I mean, it was an awful time. We couldn't dock anywhere. It wasn't the greatest experience for me, and I just can't see how I would ever say, "Oh, let's do that again."
I don't know. So
But I was really ill. I mean, I didn't
Right.
know this, but I found out I had double pneumonia.
Yeah.
But and that stuff can take people down, you know. So my voice was in a really bad way, and I spent the best part of 16 months with my vocal coach, a guy called Roger Love, who is the best vocal coach on the planet as far as I'm concerned. I mean, in fairness, he's the only one I've ever worked with, but I know that what he did for me was almost an impossible task, but he gets in your head in the right way.
Yeah.
You can do this, and through just a lot of hard work, I worked with him on tour, off tour, every day off. I worked with him for an hour just to start building up areas of my voice, and now I've got areas that I didn't even know I had. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm singing better now than I've ever sung in my life.
Yeah.
And it's all down to the fact that I had to do this. Otherwise, I had no career. Now, I do acknowledge that I was 56, 57 years old when this happened. That's just about the right age for me to go, I'm not done. If I was 70, I may have gone, I can't do this. I can't do this. So maybe when you get into literally, if you look at everybody's skin when they're 70 compared to, say, when they're 23, so is your insides.
Mm-hmm.
So vocal cords have took the same battering as your hair or your eyes or whatever doesn't work anymore. Your knees, for example, like mine. So I can understand from a business point of view why certain people do this lip sync thing. I also understand from a financial point of view, a lesser band having some backing vocals on a keyboard because they can't afford 3 hotel rooms, 3 backing singers for 2-3 months at a time on the road. I can see why they do it.
I have a different view, but okay.
I don't agree with it. But
Right.
I can see why. It's this, Vegas, I imagine everybody, all these people that put the shows on, they do more dancing than singing. They're not really singing, which is why I really love Pink, because she absolutely is. She tosses herself around on wires. She sings Back in Black or Highway to
She
Hell.
canceled the show
on
because she
wires.
couldn't sing. I was like, well, she was running tracks.
So
She would've just
it's
sang
got to the
track.
point now where if I see a bit of me on YouTube and I go, oof, a bit flat or a bit sharp or whatever, I go, yeah, well, at least it's real.
Yeah.
I'm actually wearing my not great singing as a badge of honor.
Well, you should.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it's like, this is who I am.
Yes.
Sometimes Lionel Messi, who's the best footballer on the planet, sometimes he gets it wrong. Sometimes I get it wrong. it's not ever going to be perfect. Maybe Paul Rogers is perfect.
Still, it's
maybe
amazing.
Sammy is perfect. Maybe
Steven Tyler.
There's literally a handful. The rest
Glenn
of
Hughes.
us, Glenn Hughes. The
Glenn
rest
is
of us,
ridiculous.
it's damn hard work.
Yeah.
But I'm still prepared to do it right.
Thank God. All right. So one more thing here, and real quick on the cruise. I hear you. I know it was tragic with Jimmy dying. I know it wasn't your voice and all that. But Leopard's in a different place now than they even were then, and all those tragic things could never happen again. I just
Well,
think,
I hope not.
No, I just think that something tells me it would go a lot better. I'm not saying for
It would, but if somebody said to me, "Hey, you want to go on a cruise, or do you want to play a stadium in Denver?"
Well, of course.
Let me think about that for a minute.
Speaking of playing, by the way, I want to mention this. There's a festival coming up the weekend of October 11th that I'm actually hosting in Tennessee called Exit 111.
That's
and
a really weird coincidence, because guess what?
You're headlining.
We're on it too.
One of the days, yeah.
Yeah, we're on the 12th. The day after the Down and Outs album comes out, I go back into Leopardland.
Yeah, and it's
what a great life I have.
Is it just the one show that for the rest
well,
of the year
yes,
in Tennessee?
We've got that show, and then we're off again until the 2nd of November. Okay. And they've revamped the arena in Sacramento, and they asked us if we'd open it, if we'd be the first band to open it. So we're doing a gig in Sacramento on November the 2nd, and then I'm going home.
All right, back to Dublin.
And probably work on some more Down and Out stuff, write some more Leopard stuff, put my feet up, watch a lot of winter soccer. I'm going to hibernate until next year.
Nice. Okay, so let's get our last break in, and now we'll turn it over to our audience when we come back from this break. We have some people that want to ask a question to Joe. I promised our studio audience we can do that, and we'll get to it right after this. All right. This has been so much fun, as it always is when we talk rock with Joe Elliott. Could do this for hours and hours, and what we have over the decades, I think. Joe is promoting the new Down and Outs record again. Let's not forget about that. October 11th, everybody pre-order, get it. Whatever, we were just talking about formats off the air. Whatever format moves you and that you're into, whether it's vinyl, whether it's CD, whether it's cassette.
8-track.
Cassette is coming back.
Yeah,
it
cassette's
truly
coming back,
is. It's
yeah.
crazy. What did you do a cassette on Down and Outs?
No, but I tell you a great story. When we toured with Cheap Trick when they put the latest album out.
Yeah.
He says, "Dude, we're number one
8-track.
on the 8-track chart." He said, "We sold one copy."
Yeah. I said to Rick, why the hell would you put out an 8-track of the latest record? And he goes, well, we need to be number one on somebody's chart. That's classic. If you know Cheap Trick, that's classic Cheap Trick humor. Before we run out of time, let's get to those questions. Sally in the front row with her Def Leppard Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction shirt.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Turn around, Sally. Let's see the back, because I love what it says on the back. It's about fucking time. There you go. I couldn't agree more. Sally, your question for Joe.
My question is a two-part question.
Oh, God. That means I have to think.
Oh, come on. No.
I won't remember
the
the first part by the time you say the
fine.
second one.
The first part is, what was your favorite part of the recent residency, and how soon can we have another one?
Okay. What was my favorite? Well, changing the set every night, I think, was... and doing some songs that we haven't done for so long. So opening with Die Hard was spectacular. The set itself was just to die for. I mean, honestly, the great thing about doing a residency is it's one load in, and a month later it's one load out. So you can bring a hell of a lot more than you could on a general tour. So even when we walked out on stage for the first sound check, we all walked out there and went, whoa, this, because we'd only seen like mock-ups of it, but to actually stand in front of this ginormous stage with the 5 separate screens and all that kind of stuff. And then the first thing I saw is like, it's going to be a marathon running around thing, because it was like a football pitch. But, it was amazing. So the set itself, changing the songs up every night, and I really enjoyed the acoustic set as well. And to be quite honest, having run around on that stage for 45 minutes by then, I needed to sit down for 15 minutes.
But I got to tell you, honestly, man, you look great. You look really, really good. So maybe that running around that stage was a plus for you.
This is not me. This is a mime. This is a mime. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Let's get to Tom, who's next up. Tom, where are you? Walk up to our microphone if you don't mind.
Hi, I'm Tom.
Hi, Tom.
In 1987, I saw you guys play at the Top of the Pops in Hollywood.
Right, yeah.
So my question is, do you remember that?
Yeah, yes, I do, because they just tried to break Top of the Pops in the USA, and it was like they're not really getting the idea of how it's supposed to be, because Top of the Pops is really cheesy, and it was so Hollywood, it was actually too good, if you know. But yes, I do remember we did, as far as I remember, we did Hysteria. I think we did it twice, or we did 2 songs.
It was Animal.
Animal was it? Okay.
I didn't realize there was a
I know we
U.S.
did it
Top
at
of the
least
Pops.
twice. Yeah,
they
there-
made a run at doing U.S.
Yeah,
Top of the Pops,
They
huh?
did, and it lasted maybe 3 months, maybe not even. I don't
Did you
remember.
actually play live, even in the British Top of the Pops? You actually
we
play live or
mimed.
lip sync?
We mimed.
Well, just like American Bandstand. We had
Yeah,
American American Bandstand here, and the song would be fading, and you would watch the singer.
Yeah.
Everyone not
And
quite
the
know how to
drummer's
end.
still doing this like Keith Moon used to do with his cymbals. Yeah, maybe it was that. But I know we also did Hysteria, because we did it at least twice.
Yes, you did.
Or we
Actually,
did 2 songs in the
now,
one.
now that I remember, you did do it. And thanks to Steve, I was standing right in front of him, and he handed me his pick.
Yeah, well, we did
awesome.
it then. We still do it now. God bless him, yeah.
Nice.
Thank you, Tom. Where is Glenn in our audience? Glenn, step right up.
All right. Eddie, I don't know how this question got in here.
Oh,
but-
this isn't that metal show
I'm
now.
just kidding.
Although it feels like it.
Ben, this is so cool. Hey, Joe, I'm Glenn.
Hey, Glenn.
Simple 2-part question. Looking back on the amazing career you have, not necessarily the biggest thing you've done, but what is the one thing, if you can remember or think about, that's most dear to your heart, that you're most proud of looking back over your career? And then what do you still have in the tanks that you're dreaming about coming up?
If I had to pick one specific moment, gun to the head, pick one, I would have to say the Freddie Mercury tribute show, when me and Phil, who reluctantly, by the way, I'm not doing it. Yeah, you are. You'll regret this for the rest of your life if you don't. Walked up and stood either side of Brian May when they did All the Young Dudes. And we were stood there singing it with Brian May, who is, a friend of ours, but he'd been a hero as a kid. And we're looking down the line, and there's Mick Ronson, Ian Hunter, David Bowie, and all the rest, and Roger Taylor and John Deacon, doing my favorite song of all time in front of a 1.5 billion TV audience and 70,000 people in the stadium. That's probably the best 3 minutes of my life. I couldn't have done it without being in the band, so I owe the band a debt of gratitude for being able to be up there. But just seeing them down there and seeing Bowie wink at us and, talking to him afterwards about it, and because he knew I'd met him before at name dropping, at Bono's house, and he'd say like, "Oh, you like that song, don't you?" And I said, "Yes, David, I do." And it was Mick's last ever performance, Mick Ronson's last ever performance. He died, just a couple of weeks after that. So it means a lot to me, that 3 minutes. As regards what's left in the tank.
Yeah.
Well, the Down and Outs album has just emptied it, but I'm back at the gas station filling up again. There's lots left, I'm 60 years old now, but I still feel like I'm 12. I just ache a bit more in places, that's all, like everybody else does. But, I look at what's going on out there above us, and I'm looking at Fleetwood Mac and the Eagles still selling out stadiums because their songs mean something to people.
And we
Even if
talked
they-
about Tyler at 71.
Steven
what he's
Tyler,
doing.
71. Sammy Hagar is pushing 71. He's 70 at
More
least.
than 71, yeah.
Is he? Mick Jagger's 75. You're looking at, and Paul McCartney's 75.
I just
think.
saw him on
And he plays
back-to-back 3-hour nights.
Yeah, he does 3 hours. And have you ever watched? Next time you watch him, watch carefully. He doesn't take a drink, a sip of water all night.
I didn't notice that.
I'm halfway through Die Hard the Hunter. I'm doing gallons during the night. This is what that 2 minutes is for. This is replenish. He doesn't touch it. So how does he do that?
I never
So I
realized
look
that.
at those guys and I go, well, if they can, we have to at least try. So there's more new music coming. There's more touring. You've got to remember one thing. It's simple. We really enjoy what we do. Which is why we do it. Nobody's got a gun to my head saying, get out on tour.
Thank you, Glenn. Appreciate it. Where is Heidi? We're looking for Heidi.
She's hiding.
Heidi in a Def Leppard sweatshirt.
Yay.
Very cool.
Thanks for taking my question. I want to learn more about or understand your process for writing music, because don't y'all live on different continents? So do you come together at a period of time and have things pre-written, or do you like improv and jam it, or how do you? write your music now?
It depends. Each situation is different. So, for example, on any given day, take the down and out sing out this whole scenario for now. I'll be at home doing nothing, and the phone rings. All right, it's Phil. I've got this riff. I think you're really going to like it. I'm going to send you an MP3. So he sends me an MP3. I listen to it and go, okay, that's cool. All right. I say, yeah, it sounds like Cracked Actor by Bowie or whatever. Okay, what do you want? He says, well, you write the lyrics on this one. I can't be bothered. Or I've got something else I'm working on. So he's in California. I'm in Dublin. He sent me the MP3. The challenge is write some lyrics. Had we been in the same room, it's the same process. I'm not going to sit there in front of him and write them. I'm going to take it to my room and mess about with it. And while he'd be off doing something else, if we were in the same building, it wouldn't make any difference. So the songwriting process is different for each person. Sometimes Phil comes in with a finished song, like Sea of Love. It was done. He put a guide vocal on it. I said, what do you want me to do any different? And I said, I'll just copy what you've done then. So it was his song, and I did what I'm guessing Roger Daltrey's done all his career. He's sung a Townsend melody and over a guide, And then there's other songs where I'll write the song, and they have to learn to play the chords because hopefully better than me. But they get the basis of what it is off my demo. And sometimes my demos are so well made because I do them in the same studio where we record the album that they literally just replace. So it's, Rick will play the drums over the machine drum, and Sav will replace the bass, and Vivian and Phil will replace the guitars. And if I've done a half decent vocal, the demo vocal stays on there. For example, on the last Def Leppard record, there's a song called Invincible. That is the guide vocal. Oh, wow. They just changed everything underneath because he sounded great. Phil said, you ain't going to sing that again, are you? He says, he sounds really good. Because he says, you sound like Billy Idol.
And then if you did do it again, you'd always go back saying the demo was better. How many times
we
have
have
you heard
done
that?
We've done that. We did that on Slang. On the song Slang in 96, I went in there. That was the guide vocal. And I went in there and tried to sing it better. And it's like, 5 hours later, 2 days later, we kept being said the demo was better. Fine, scrap the other crap.
Wow. All right, we got 2 minutes left. Darlene is the last person I want to ask a question. Darlene, you got the last one.
you,
Go
Heidi.
ahead.
Hi, Joe.
Hi.
You've already mentioned it, but you, when you had met Bowie, what was that meeting like? When you had first met him, did you speak music or did you speak sports, or what was that like?
I kind of went like this. It was 1989. We were starting to.
You got 2 minutes.
We were starting to write what would be the Adrenalize album, and it's a summer in Dublin, and it's a beautiful night. And Bowie's doing the Sound and Vision farewell tour, and he's playing Dublin the night after. Bono throws a barbecue. We were neighbours, so of course I get invited. And as I walked through the door, Bono said to me, "Come here." He says, "I have somebody I want you to meet." So he takes me upstairs to where he's got a snooker table room. Bowie sat on the snooker table. He says, "I thought you might want 5 minutes." I'm like, you could have warned me.
I could have prepared.
It's like, hi, David. Hello, Joe. How are you? And I don't know I don't remember. It's like, how you doing? Yeah, great. Nice weather. What about the 49ers? I mean, what do you say? If eventually the ice got broken a bit better, we got downstairs and into his garden, and we started talking just about stuff, But I do remember that he brought up the fact that he didn't have a version of his All the Young Dudes, the version he recorded during the Aladdin Insane sessions. And I said, I've got one at home. And he went, can I get one? So the next day, he stood just about to go on stage in Dublin, and he's wearing his beautiful suit with a top pocket here. And I pulled out this cassette. I went, there you go. And he went, thank you very much. Puts it in his top pocket, goes on stage.
Wow.
I'm stood up in the balcony with Bono going, he's got my dudes in his pocket. It's brilliant.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so
This has been a blast show. I can't thank you enough for the time. So much fun to talk music with you as
Thank
always.
you, everyone. Appreciate
Down
it.
and Outs, October 11th. Be sure to pick it up. This is how we roll. And see Def Leppard at Exit 111 coming up in a couple weeks. It's going to be a great festival. I look forward to seeing you there, and look forward to what's coming next for Def Leppard and Joe Elliott and Down and Outs. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
के में आके